Well, hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby pod. All eyes are set on the Stade de France tomorrow. Matt, it's going to be an absolute cracker, isn't it?
What a game we're looking forward to. Two teams, best teams in Europe. You've got to say one and two in Europe, in my opinion. France 1, Ireland 2. But it's the attitude that both teams take into their games currently that's just looks so exciting. They're both playing really attacking, open, positive rugby. They've both had great success in the last 6 months, and they're going to play the same way. I believe it looks dry. Quinny will give us a better idea of that later on, just on the forecast. I can see it looks like it's going to be dry. Packed Stade de France, full of the tricolours flying. The Marseillaise being sung. You know, it's just going to be one of those great days for the players and for us. Looking forward to it.
Alan, this is what it's all about as a player, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's incredibly exciting. I think a lot of these players have been to Stade de France before and had success and won there, but it's certainly one to look forward to. I think particularly with both sides kind of riding high at the moment and being full of confidence and self-belief and great excitement about their teams. So the Six Nations always has a special feel to it, and these are the two favourites for the tournament. One of them will go on and put themselves in that Grand Slam position. The other, it's that kind of dream is over for them. But one to look forward to. There's no doubt about it. I think everybody's excited about it.
Matt, the big news: Joey Carbery starts at 10. Johnny Sexton injured. Joey's first Six Nations start. It's hard to believe. What a big day for him.
It is hard to believe it's his first Six Nations start. Stu, I was just looking through his stats there, and he started in 2016 in that famous victory in Chicago against New Zealand. He came off the bench that day, and he was only 21. Now, that's 2016. So I just really was taken aback that this was his first Six Nations start. But it tells you the adversity the young man's gone through, and I really admire him. There's no doubting his talent. His confidence will be down, but look, I think in the long run for Ireland, Irish rugby, and for Joey, this is a blessing in disguise. It's sure it might make tomorrow harder. You're losing one of Ireland's greatest ever players, so there's no doubt about that's a blow. But in the long, what if this is the quarterfinal, the Tuesday before the quarterfinal at the next World Cup, and Johnny goes down? We need Joey to have had time in the saddle. So in the long run, if we take that we get up in the helicopters and we fly up and we look at it, this is going to be a bonus for Ireland in the long run. The second part of that is I just think Joey's going to play well. I just think he's at the point where he's played, I think it's 28 tests. He's obviously played for Leinster in a lot of big games, Munster in a lot of big games. We know his talent. And he's had this horrific run of injuries. I just think the young man's going to say, you know what, bugger this, I'm just going out and doing it. I think he'll be relaxed. And as long as he just eases himself into the game, Stewie, I was saying, and Alan might be interested in this. You know, I was always given great advice at the beginning of a big game when you're a 10, a young 10 especially. Best card you can play is a tour clubs. It's the lowest card in the pack. Just do your job. Catch, pass, kick. You've got to listen to your inside centre, be guided by them and build into the game. And if Joey can do that, I think Ireland will go well, because Ireland aren't going to change the way they're going to play. Ireland are going to play the same structures, do the same thing that they did last week. And Joey's going to fit into that system. And I think it's not going to be the train smash that a lot of people are feeling. And I think definitely in the long run it's a plus. But I also got a feeling in my guts that Joey's going to go all right, and I hope he does.
Alan, do you agree with Matt there? Do you think Joey will go well tomorrow?
Yeah, he has the ability to go well. No matter how good you are, it's still a very big challenge for any player. Even for Jonathan Sexton, we saw 2 years ago when Ireland were beaten 35-27, I think, in that game that was on in October during the pandemic. It was the Six Nations was postponed. How difficult it can be when you're playing against a French side who have that bit of X factor and can create and show signs of sublime play as well. So Matt is right. I think for Joey Carbery, he's just got to do the basics really well, and part of that basics is defending, because they're going to send Mofana down that channel. Their back row are going to try and run at him. and he's got to be strong and robust there and do the basics well. I actually think the way Ireland are playing and trying to play, and that change that we've seen, will suit Joey Carbery, because he is someone who he's very calm. It was one thing that stood out for me a number of years ago when I met him, how relaxed and chilled out he was, and how he just takes it in his stride. He's very composed, and he's a lot of confidence and self-belief in himself. He's been incredibly unlucky with injuries. I think it's just he's had a bad run. I think there's supreme talent there, and this is a great opportunity for him to perform. And it's incredible to think it's his first start. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. It was an alarming kind of a stat, because we would assume when you've 26 caps that he would have started one of the games or a couple of games over the years. It hasn't happened, and you know, I think it's a tough challenge for him. But if his teammates play around him, they can certainly help. I think Bundyaki was outstanding last week, and he's going to be very important to Joey inside, the type of delivery Gibson Park gives him. And if the game kind of opens a little bit, and if Ireland are kind of running this attack that we've seen from them in November and last week, I think that will suit Joey Carbery, and he is a very, very talented player. So it just depends what kind of pressure France put him under. And something that France do a lot, and this is a real Sean Edwards ply, is they try and send a runner out of the defensive line to get at the fly half. A lot of the time that's Dupont off phase, because he's so quick and he times his runs perfectly. So they're going to send Dupont flying out of the line, trying to get up into Joey Carbery's face. And it's just how he deals with that pressure. And, you know, I really, really, really hope it goes well for him, because if Ireland lose this game, you know, will we be going back saying, well, Johnny Sexton was the reason? But we're going to have to live without Johnny Sexton in the not too distant future anyway. There's no guarantees going forward. He's been an incredible player, and you know, I expect him to go to the World Cup and keep that level to get to the World Cup. And we know how good Johnny Sexton has been, but we're going to have to cope at some stage without him. And this big debate that's gone on for a long time about the gap between Johnny Sexton and the rest, well, we've just got to get on with it. And this could be a great thing. If Ireland were to win this game, there's two ways this can go. It can go bad, and we can end up blaming Joey Carbery, which probably will ultimately, if it happens, will be unfair, because it'll be a team effort, and there'll be certain things that happen in the game if Ireland don't win. If they win this game, well, then see the reaction that can come out of that. So it's you live by the sword and die by the sword in international rugby, and there's a lot of pressure on Joey. And as I said, he's a very, very, very talented player, and I really hope it goes well for him.
Matt, it must be so frustrating as a player, you know, for everyone to say the gap between Joey or Jack Carty is so big compared to Johnny Sexton. How does a player like in a fly half deal with that?
Yeah, well, it's very unsettling because you can see players are going in and out of the team. Now, I think if Joey was fit, as Alan said, he's had this horrific run of injuries. If he didn't have that horrific run, I think he would have been the number two, clearly. And that's, in my opinion, why he went to Munster. He felt he needed to go to Munster and you know, play games regularly to prove that he was equal to or better than Johnny. Now, he's just had a bad run. If we come back a little bit, I will answer your question, Stu, but it's a big indictment on the selectors since 2016 that Joey has not started a game. Now, I know he in the Six Nations. I know he's been injured, and I know it hasn't been easy. But this is exactly the type of poor long-term selection policy that Ireland have done since 1987 when the first World Cup was on. So Joey came in 2016. That's 6 years, and they haven't given him a start. Now, I know he's been injured, and I know he hasn't always been available. But how ridiculous is it that our number two out half, the guy that we're relying on, that everyone believes is number two, and despite all the greatness of Sexton, we've got to have a number two, has had no starting time in the Six Nations, not even against Italy. I mean, that is really poor management, long-term management of our players. And that's part of the reason we don't do well at the World Cup. And I will come back to it, Jim. But if you look at at Gregor Townsend. What Gregor Townsend's done this week after winning in Wales, he's changed his whole front row around. His starting front row from last week are on the bench, and his bench front row is starting. That's how you give people time to learn. You've got to do that. Now, it's worse for the guys behind Joey, and we've got the Byrne brothers, we've got Billy Burns, and we're back to Jack Carty. And Jack was at the World Cup, didn't do as well, was dropped. So those guys, they have their confidence smashed on a rotating basis. They drop one, bring the other one back, drop one, bring the other one back, drop one, bring the other one back, and they just keep going in a circle. And, I think it just knocks their confidence around. And eventually I think they lose self-belief. And I do believe that. It'll be very interesting to see how Jack Carty goes. And I hope he goes well. He's played really well for Connacht. But we've got to suggest that our long-term selection policy and how we're managing the out halves below Sexton over a 15-year career has not been up to the standards required.
Alan, do you agree with that? Do you think the selection policy hasn't been right over the last couple of years?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure really. I'm not disagreeing with Matt, but I'm just not sure about what the right thing to do is. My own experience in being involved in with Munster for 15 years, you had Ronan O'Gara, who was world class and became world class. Out halves just don't grow on trees. If you look at, and I've made this point, I think Rod retired in 2013. There's 6 A schools teams in Munster over, that's over nearly 10 years. And throughout his career, he would have played for 14 or 15 years. So if you take average at a 15-year period, that's 6 fly halves a year on each team. Maybe they're backups, and then take the other schools. So you're looking at maybe 100 fly halves who've played at that time in the school. That's just in the school system. And I've seen no Ronan O'Gara come through or anyone at that level. So it's amazing at times that it's just down to luck, it's down to quality, it's down to just these type of players. They're hard to find, and they're hard to replace when they leave, the top quality ones, because they're such influential players. So I think there has been definitely an ambition to try and bring more guys through. And, we've seen a lot of good fly halves play in the 20s. I think the most exciting in recent years for me that I've seen, and he can disagree or the listeners can disagree, is Jack Crowley. I thought, he and I still believe that he has that bit of spark, that physical presence, that size, that footballing ability to get up to this level. But unique players, O'Gara, Sexton, Humphreys, I played with all these guys. Go back to Tony Ward, Ollie Campbell, they don't just grow on trees, fly halves of that nature and that quality. So the policy around selection, I think there's certainly plenty of players have got opportunities, but just the quality and the level of quality that's required hasn't been there. Do you write these players off and say, well, look, if they don't make it at 21, 22, 23, that they're not good enough? No. Like Jack Carty, I think, is 29 now, and he's had a bit of an up and down trajectory with Ireland. But I still believe what I see this year is if he played on the Irish team, or even comes on tomorrow, that he's capable of doing brilliant things. The same with Carbery. So it's a difficult question, but like I say, Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne, there's lots of very, very talented guys. And you look at someone like Ross Byrne, who looks so comfortable and plays so well with Leinster. And then we've seen him play for Ireland, and he hasn't had the same kind of impact or results. And I know Ireland went through a difficult period, probably 2019, 2020. It was, 18 months or 2 years it had been difficult. So it just depends on timing, players around you and stuff like that. But ultimately, when you see these type of guys, they don't come around very often.
If we bring it back to tomorrow, Matt, Ireland were so good against Wales. Attacking rugby was brilliant. What type of game plan can we expect tomorrow?
Well, I don't think Ireland are going to change. I hope they don't, because the only way you're going to go to the Stade de France and win is outscore France. And to do that, you've got to have that attacking mindset that they've had since November. You know, the game against New Zealand, Argentina to a lesser degree, because the opposition wasn't as good. And then, you know, to beat Wales in that emphatic style that they did, knowing that they weren't perfect, that they left probably 3 tries. They could have scored up to 60 points out there against Wales if they were as accurate as they could or should have been. If they take that to Paris, they got to show. They got to show. They got a red hot show. If you had said to me last June, what's the score going to be in Paris? I'm going to say France are going to win this game going away. Since then, the Irish attack's been a revelation. It's been as Shane Horgan said on TV there the other week, this wasn't an evolution, it's been a revolution. It's gone where it came from, how they decided to change. It's just been so radical, but it's been great. It's great to watch, sexy rugby, but it's successful. They're winning games. They flogged New Zealand. Like, they didn't just, this wasn't a penalty goal in the last second to beat them. They outplayed New Zealand in every department. I've rarely seen that over my lifetime. Seen New Zealand lose, but not outplayed. Now, if they take this to Paris, because it's a 15-man game, they've got to show. Ireland are not perfect. Their wingers are jamming in defence, and they're not getting that right all the time. Last year, that's where France took Ireland apart at an empty Aviva. So if the Irish wingers don't get it right, they'll be in trouble. They'll have a hard day because France are going to play on the extremities. And once France get behind you, and usually it is on the extremities, they've got great support lines. And you saw the tries last week by Villiers. He followed Aldridge through a hole, bang off his shoulder. You saw Dupont and Fenno on the right side. Fenno makes a break, back to Dupont back to Fenno, try. When they get in behind you, their support lines and their ability to finish off that break is excellent. Probably close to the best in the world with New Zealand. Now, if the Irish wingers get that wrong, they could be in for a hard day. But in attack, they've got to score the points, because France will give you points as well. The French defence has been very much improved under Sean Edwards, but it's not perfect. They leak a lot of points. They win games, but they very rarely win them by a 30, 40-point blowout, apart from Italy. They're sort of closer games. But it is a growing French side. So look, it's away from home. Ireland have played 9 games straight at the Aviva. They haven't had these players. Many of these players haven't played in front of a hostile away crowd. And let me tell you, it's hostile in Paris ever for Ireland, and the other guys haven't done it for years. So it's advantage France on every front. Advantage France. That's where Ireland like to be, and they've got to show. It's going to be tough, but they still got to show.
Alan, Ireland, welcome back. Henderson and Robbie Henshaw, big boost for them, isn't it? So much experience.
Yeah, it is, and they're powerhouses. They're strong. They're mentally strong, physically strong players. They're 2 British and Irish lines, so it's a huge boost. Big blow, Johnny Sexton being out, but having these 2 guys off the bench will be really important. I think. I spoke about the physicality last week, and they're 2 very physical players, Henshaw and Henderson, and they're big game players, so they won't be daunted by this. Matt mentions, some of these players haven't played in a while in front of big crowds, but and maybe they haven't experienced the Stade de France, but like when you look at the Irish team, Furlong, James Ryan, Ty Byrne, Josh van der Fleer, Aki, Ringrose, Conway, they've all been here, they've played here, they've won here. There's a couple of players like Doris and Ronan Keller who probably haven't, Hugo Keenan, but they're players that just I don't think they get daunted by the task. They'll be very, very aware and conscious of the power that France have, and if you allow any French team play, you're going to struggle, because they can be outstanding. Dupont, Intermac, they're the 2 that can create something out of nothing, and they can cut you wide open. And they did that 2 years ago in that game, that kind of championship decider. But then when you look at Scotland last year, in that last Six Nations game. It was kind of crazy that just the way they played and the way they beat France in the end and stopped them winning a championship. And I just thought that, it's not, you don't have to be a rocket science to figure out. You've got to really make France go to kind of that pain threshold, pain barrier, and test their work rate. Are they going to work as hard as you for long periods of time? If you allow them get through you after 1, 2, 3, 4 phases, if they get line breaks and little offloads that Matt was talking about, the Aldred Villiers one last week, it's soft. They capitalize on that and they usually punish you. Ireland have got to make it really, really difficult defensively. And I suppose the impression here from lots of people is we're going to get 2 attacking sides going full throttle. Well, what usually happens in games like that, it's a game of penalties and no tries. So we'd still happily win that game. But it's about rolling up the sleeves here, being really physical. And I think that Ireland, even though Galtier was saying this week that they've analysed Ireland a lot and vice versa, both sides were a bit rusty last week. I just think their ability to hold on to the ball with Ireland gives me confidence that they will force penalties, or else they will get line breaks. The worry and concern is when we don't have the ball. Can we get those impact tackles in? Can we win those physical collisions adequately enough to stop France? And that's the conundrum, really.
Yeah, Matt, Alan talks about the physicality there. An area the French against the Italian team last week was so big was at the breakdown. They just hit the Italian breakdown so hard and turned them over, didn't they?
They did. Alan was pointing it out to me there last weekend that when France were taking, the forwards were taking the ball forward, they were like it was one player running forward, and you're thinking he's going to get turned over, he's going to get caught. But against the Italians, the physicality of just the one guy by himself and one support player clearing out was enough to secure the ball. Now, I'm pretty certain Ireland will have analysed that. I know they would have. And if Ireland can get 2-man tackles in or 3-man and try and slow that ball down or get the penalties, like we know what Tyke Burner's like over the ball. We know that Kelleher's very good at it. Kona's very good at it. Porter's very good at it. If they can get over the ball a few times and disrupt them, that's great. But what Ireland have to watch is on the reverse. France were leaving Geelong out in the flanks, right on the wings, and when the Italian wingers or outside centres were getting tackled, he was hitting those rucks like you would not believe. There was one ruck he hit, and it's him versus 4 Italians, and he won. He won that. He came in, and eventually other French players came in, and they got a turnover. About a couple of seconds later, that led to a French try. And I think that's where they're going to attack Ireland, is the physicality when the ball goes wide. Because Ireland are moving the ball wide, which is great. But our wingers aren't the biggest men in the world, and neither is Hugo Kiernan. So we've got some small dudes out wide. They're brave and they're strong. I'm not questioning any of that. But I think that's where France will really target Ireland at that power play in there. The other interesting one, which I like Quinny's opinion on, Paul O'Connell's designed probably the best defensive line out in the world. Statistically, it is the best defensive line out in the world. What France did last week at the beginning of the game, they just threw the 2 in the line out. They did a fast one, and they kept throwing a 2. And because the Italians were defending the middle and the tail. And what it forced the Italians to do was to change. They had to come and then defend the front. And, of course, that opens up the middle and the tail. So it was really smart line-out tactics from France. And when you got Dupont at 9, who's got this unbelievably powerful pass, he's still hitting his 10, 5, 6, 7 metres outside the 15-metre line, even though it's coming off at 2, off the line-out. So there's a battle of tactics going on. Yes, there is power in the breakdown, without doubt, and I think France might have a slim advantage there. You know, Furlong and these boys aren't any shrinking violets. You know, they're going to be going at this as well. They're powerful dudes as well. But it's this whole tactical battle that's going to go on between the coaches, the whole coaching staff. Alan said about Sean Edwards sending Dupont up. No doubt. I believe that's going to happen. He did it last week. Dupont swung around as a sweeper on the first play. Then he came into the line and hit the Italian 10 behind the gain line. So there's all these little mini subplots that are going to be fascinating to watch. But I think especially the line out, and I'd love to know what Al thinks might occur there.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah, Alan. Sorry, a final one for you on that. Do you think Ireland will be able to match the French physicality, and what do you make of the set piece situation?
I think they will be able to match. And look, on some days you get more than parity. You know, this team, Matt said it. Yeah, I think Porter, Keller, and Furlong can be the best tight front row in the world. They've shown glimpses of that. We know Furlong is probably the best tight head in the world. He's all round game. Keller, to me, has just become a great player for this Irish side. Is there a weakness sometimes maybe in the line-out throwing, and you get better in that over time? Porter's such a wonderful player around the field. He's going to be up against Antonio, who is incredibly big, heavy. He's still adjusting to that loose head position again and getting used to playing at that level. So they're incredibly physical. James Ryan and Ty Byrne, they're not the biggest second rows in the world. Willems is someone who does a lot of damage for France, particularly if you're trying to maul against him. He just breaks up your maul. He's a very powerful scrummager. Small things that maybe we don't see and some people don't see. I think our back row is probably as good, if not better, potentially, even though it's a very, very good back row of Aldridge, Jalanche and Cross. So it's a small little difference. Marchand is a superb hooker. I think he does gets his hands in on so many breakdowns and slows ball down, wins penalties. Sirabai is a really good carrier as well. So we're probably lacking a kilo or two in some areas there, but I think it's a very hard, abrasive pack of forwards Ireland have now. And they're all footballers. They're all good ball carriers. So the key to playing a side that there's concerns about physicality is, and their efficiency at the breakdown has been superb. I think Paul O'Connell has made a huge difference there in bringing in, the template that they would have had under Joe, where there's accountability, there's understanding of your role in the breakdown, and they're really effective at that. So that's got to be top notch. And then it makes that physical side, much easier. One thing that I think really helps you from a physical point of view is not soaking tackles. And when I say soak tackles, that France are not getting over the gain line, because that's when they just get a yard or two in behind you and the breakdown is quick. And Dupont and Intimac get their hands on the ball. That's when they do special stuff and they can really hurt teams. So I think the impact tackles and the collisions are really vital. Is it a major concern for me, the physicality? No, it's not. But it's one of the big strengths of this French side is their size and their physicality. And, in matches we've struggled in the last couple of years when Ireland were going through a difficult period, sometimes we were overpowered. Galtier has come out and said, our intention is to overpower Ireland. And, the 6-2 split would indicate that as well.
Yeah, big words from Galtier. It's going to be a real cracking test tomorrow. Moving on, Matt, Wales v Scotland. Surely it's set up for a Scottish win, but then when you think that, it never happens, does it?
Stewie, this is the games that Scotland traditionally lose. They just come off a great win. They play really well. They should win this next game, and that's usually when they break your heart, and they don't. So I think Scotland can win this. I think it will. Let me come back a bit. I think it's a really pivotal game for this Scottish side. They've talked themselves up. There is no doubt it's the most talented Scottish team since they won the last time in 1999. So, but each time, like last year, they let themselves down on games they should win. They beat France and England away, and then they blow the game against Wales at home. Now, Stuart Hogg's talked it up. Gregor's talked it up about that they've learnt. This is where the rubber hits the road. Now, they've got Gregor's made a few changes. As I said before, he swapped his front rows around. I actually think that's a good move. I think it's smart rugby, and that replacement front row is huge. It's big, and going away from home in Cardiff, to start like that, we're losing anything. They've changed their centres. Johnson's gone out and Tupilutu's come in. Again, I think that Johnson was. We hardly mentioned his name in the call last week. Again, I think that's a reasonably positive change. So I think Scotland are in pretty good shape. And as I said, that's when they'll lose. So it's a day for this Scottish side to grow up, to mature, to take responsibility. And even though this is a poor Wales side and they've got a few injuries, Dan Biggar's 100th and Jonathan Davies returns on the bench if he gets on, and I'm sure he will. It'll be his 100th cap. So they've made some changes, some forced, some not. But when you go to Cardiff, every single time you go to Cardiff, that's a tough day. It's one of the toughest places in the world. The atmosphere is incredible, but it's tough because the people lift their home side. So I think Scotland should win, but as I said, it's a big day for them to grow up and mature. If they lose, then we just got them back where they were last year. They're just so unreliable and inconsistent.
Alan, as Matt says, it's a big, big day for Scotland. Is Gregor Townsend and his team, have they matured enough? Can they back up a win with another win?
Yeah, they're capable of it. The last time they won in Cardiff was when, Matt? 2002.
Something like that, mate.
2002. No, they won in
Park before me.
They won in Park the Scarlets in October 2020 when the
You want to see my scars from Cardiff? Do you want to see
them? So look, it's Wales. Wales are going to have their backs to the wall, really, aren't they? Wayne Pivac is under a lot of pressure again. They're still missing so much experience and quality internationals. You would think that Scotland are the team that'll be full of confidence here. They'll be buoyed by the win against England last week, but it's a hard one to call. You can never write Wales off. The problem for Wales here is if they end up losing this game, their next game is away in Twickenham, and then you're looking at a bit of a disastrous situation for Wales. They will be at home to France in round 4. So I think that this is a must-win game. But it sounds very obvious, or else the whole Six Nations will be a disaster for them. If they can get a win against Scotland, they'll get some mitigation for all the players that were missing last week in Dublin. And he's made some changes. He's brought in Jack Morgan at 7 for his first cap. A really top quality player. I think he's been really good for the Ospreys this year. He's put Tane Basham to number 6. I think their back row were totally outplayed last week. Bar moments we saw from Basham, how good he can be. I think he's a really exciting player, but I think that ultimately they had to make changes. And they're short in midfield, Josh Adams is out, Owen Watkin comes in there. But when you play Wales in Cardiff, it's a different ball game. Matt said it about the atmosphere. But on paper, I think Scotland are the team that can go here and win. They've made changes across the front row, but I think bringing in Schumann, Stuart McAvoy and WP Nell, well, they're very, very strong players, and they made a big impact last week when they came on the field. So, even if you reverse back to Sutherland and Turner and Fagerson, he's now 6 players there that's given them a little bit of a steal, a little bit of an edge that they've lacked before, and some depth there. But on paper, I think it's Scotland's to lose, really.
Yeah, Matt, touching on Wales there, were you surprised how poor they were last Saturday in Dublin?
No, I wasn't, Stuart. I think we're just starting to see the results of a lack of investment in their provincial sides and their development sides, and how hugely that has deteriorated over the last 10, 15 years. And they were buoyed. I think Gatlin held it together, his coaching, and he had a very good generation or two of players come through. And behind that, you could see this massive hole. And last year, there was sort of some tape put over it. They got out of jail against Wales. That is, got out of jail against Scotland, but they should have lost that. No one thought they were going to win the championship. Scotland beat France in the last seconds, but but everyone goes, oh, Wales are incredible. And they were. They deserve it. I'm not suggesting that. But all of us could see the cracks and the problems there. And we were astounded that they kept finding a way to rise above it. But eventually, if you're not investing enough in your junior talent, it's going to fall apart. It's like having a brewery. If you don't start investing in the raw products, in the malt and the crops, eventually you're not going to run out of beer. And that's what's happened in Wales. And I think they're in for a difficult few years, like they probably went through in the late 90s, and then again probably in the early 2000s, until they really started to get their act together. And I think Gatland gave them a false sense of security, and we're just seeing some reality start to bite. I actually, the scenario that Alan just put out there, I think will occur. I think they will lose to Scotland. Therefore, I've just put the kiss of death on Scotland. I do think they'll lose to Scotland, and I think they're in real trouble. They'll beat Italy, but that'll be about it, I think.
Well, we will see. Alan, now let's take a look at Sunday. We head to Rome. Italy take on England. England obviously disappointed. You were at Murrayfield. Were you surprised at how they played? And I suppose losing that game, that's got to hurt, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does hurt, and I think what will hurt most is the manner in the defeat. I think they tactically got it wrong. They kicked away too much ball. They didn't take their opportunities. They weren't ruthless when they got into that Scottish 22, and obviously the big talking point was their inability to close out the game. And then, of course, the talking point is the Luke Cowan-Dickey sin-binning penalty try in the end. It gave Scotland a lifeline back into the game, for a team that, to be fair to them, were very, very competitive the whole way through. And I'm not saying that Scotland stole it. They didn't, but they didn't really have a lot of pressure on that English line at any stage. The try in the first half from Ben White was brilliant out of Darcy Graham. And then the penalty try, that's 14 soft points that England conceded there. And Scotland were brilliant at the breakdown. Fagerson was outstanding. Hamish Watson, just the amount of tackles they made. So, yeah, big blow for England, but no one to blame but themselves. And in the end, limped out of Murrayfield, I think, with lots of regrets.
Matt, where do you feel this England team is at the moment?
If you consider the first half of that game, the possession and territory statistics were as one-sided towards England as you will ever see. At one point in that first half, and I'm not saying after 10 minutes, after about 25, 30 minutes, Scotland had scored a try and they'd had one ruck within 40 metres of the English try line. I mean, and England had like 35, 40 rucks in the Scottish half. And for all our talk, and I was part of it, I praised up Marcus Smith for all the talk about him before the game. He was poor. He scored a very good try in the second half because he hit the ball flat. For the vast majority of that game, he was so deep back in the pocket that and if you're deep, it just draws the defence to you. It's the exact opposite of what Ireland and Sexton are doing. They're hitting the ball and they're flat. And I'm sure that Joey will do the same thing. And being flat's called gain line theory, puts pressure on the opposition defence. Him being so deep just allowed the Scottish defenders to pick off the guys outside him. Alan hit it on the head. Their tactics were poor. Their game management was poor. And they should have had a lot more points in that first half. They weren't out of the game. But, they need Tuilagi back in that side like you wouldn't believe. They got no go forward in that the three-quarter line. Smith has got to come up flatter. He's got to be brought forward to run onto the ball and be square. But there's another part to this, mate, which is before the game, everyone's talking up the English Premiership, what they're doing over there. And listen, I keep saying this. The English Premiership is poor. Look at what the Irish provinces have done to it. and they all get ahead of themselves. And this is always England's downfall. They always believe they're better than they are. And they had a bit of a reality check there. Tactics were wrong. Play was wrong. Their key decision makers were wrong. Maro Itoje, their leader, I know he wasn't captain, but he's their leader. He's their talisman, their spiritual leader up front. He gave away penalty after penalty after penalty. He was poor. And I know he's a great player, but he was poor. They got a lot of things wrong. And they have a new coaching staff. Scotland scored 2 tries from set play. So in other words, they hit midfield and came back off a line out because they knew there weren't enough English defenders. If you come back at England off a line out, that they didn't have enough defenders. And then what they did off a scrum, they went wide and came straight back. Again, they knew England didn't have enough defenders out wide off the scrum. All that was there was the entire English front row. So England were out-thought, out-coached, outplayed, out-passioned, and the individuals that can win games on both sides were completely outweighed. The Scottish guys played really well, and the English boys didn't. They got a lot of work and a lot of thinking to do, England. A lot of work and a lot of thinking to do.
Yeah, a lot of work indeed. Alan, what about the Italians? Give them any chance at all on Sunday at all?
They showed glimpses on Sunday against France. I think the crossfield kick from Garbisi for the first try, they exposed they tried to play, and to be fair to them, they were very, very aggressive and physical against France. But it's difficult. England have met six new faces in the team, a few positional switches as well. Dombrandt, he's someone that has been superb for Harlequins in the last couple of seasons. He comes in, but there's a lot of familiar faces there. I think Itoje in the back row, and Matt said it. He gave away a lot of penalties last week, as he does so much good at times. It's not a. It's. I think Italy can play well here. They can, but ultimately, are they going to be good enough to sustain enough pressure to break down England and get tries in Rome? And unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. I think they did show glimpses, as I said, against France in Paris, but I think it's going to be a difficult one for them. But who knows? There's a little bit of uncertainty in England now, and I think they can make it quite difficult. And they've usually made it difficult in Rome for most teams that play there. So it's not going to be a rout for England, I don't think, in any form. But the problem for Italy is just those mistakes that they continuously make. When they do so much good in their defence, someone just steps out of the line or is a little bit soft in the tackle, and France exposed them last week when they got to multi-phase.
Matt, a quick word on your favourite player at the moment, Paolo Garbisi. How did you feel he got on last week?
I thought he did some really good things, and you're only as good as a 10. You're only as good as the pack in front of you. And if you look at one of the reasons we're raving about the two teams that are going to play tomorrow, France and Ireland, they're playing attacking rugby because their forward packs are laying down this brilliant platform so their backs can get involved. And I thought when the Italian pack early in the game were really taking it to France, and as Alan said, were very physical, I thought it brought Garbisi into the game. Beautiful kick. I thought he had some other great touches in the game as well. And he showed he's tough. He got a bang, got a cut in his cheek. The guy got up and moved forward. He's getting better and better and better. And that's what Italy need. But it doesn't matter how good your 10 is, Stewie, it's exactly what Alan said. Italy defended much better than they have in recent seasons. But again, at the crucial moments, just only take 4 errors and there's 4 tries at international level. If you fall off 4 tackles, there'll be 4 tries against a team like France. And that's what, unfortunately, Italy did. The score line wasn't a true reflection of what Italy did, how they attacked, and how they played. For example, as I said before, Garbisi, they did some really good backline plays that came off Garbisi. He threw great passes, good thinking, was attacking thinking. Then they get out to the flanks, and you get the French overpower them at the ruck at the flanks. They couldn't capitalise on what they're doing. But I saw improvement in Italy, and I think Garbisi's going to be like Dominguez was at the turn of the century when Italy were beating teams regularly. Carbery can grow into this talismanic figure within Italian rugby that can kick his goals, lead them around the field, and produce some positivity. But no 10 can do it without a good pack in front of him. And that pack, we forget, the Italian pack, when they were winning games at the turn of the century, they had a good pack. They had a lot of good players in that 8. And that's where they're getting beaten. The guys up front are not making the tackles, and the centres occasionally are not making the tackles. But Carbery, he's progressing, and he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, hopefully he has a big, big future ahead of him. Lads, favourite part of the week, predictions? Alan, we go to you. What are we saying?
Oh, in all 3 matches, Scotland, France, and England.
Oh, he's gone against Ireland, have you?
Well, I went with on the highlight show with Joe on Sunday night. I said Ireland, but I just think with Sexton out, it makes a big difference. I think we're going to go very close, and I'll happily eat humble pie if Ireland win. And I think they still have a great chance. I just really hope that if we don't win in France, that we're not asking too many questions. That it's down to France's quality and that we turn up and perform. Like I said, no surprises for me if Ireland win this game. I'm really confident they can go very close.
And yourself, Matt, are you agreeing with Alan or are you differing?
We haven't spoken, and we're word for word. Yeah, I think Scotland, England, and I've swung like a pendulum all week. France, Ireland. But I think with Johnny out, I just think France are going to have too much in the end. And their bench, there's too many factors against Ireland. But I'm like Alan. Ireland are in this game. This is a really, really close game, and I hope Ireland prove us all wrong. Because what I'm talking about, I know Alan's trying to put this across as well. We're talking centimetres. We're not talking meters. We're talking centimetres. France are going to be better by centimetres, as far as all the things we can judge from a distance. But there is no way we're writing Ireland off. And if Ireland lose, and Alan's absolutely right, this is the game I thought they would always lose. They can beat England and Twickenham, but France are going to go close to winning the next World Cup. This is not the France from 10 years ago or 5 years ago. This is a side that is standing toe-to-toe with New Zealand and South Africa. This is one of the best sides in the world. So if Ireland lose and just lose, there is no disgrace in this. Ireland have made great progress. And just because they lose one game doesn't mean that progress drops off. It's going to be very close. I hope they win. But I think all the things we can measure, I've got to say France.
Great stuff, man. Well, it's all set up for a big, big weekend, round 2 in the Six Nations. Thanks for listening.